Welcome to this episode of How to Really Run a City, powered by Accelerator For America, the nation's leading do tank for cities. I'm Larry Platt of the Philadelphia Citizen, a nonprofit, nonpartisan media organization that seeks to reinvigorate democracy in the American city where it was born. Check us out at thephiladelphiacitizen.org. How to Really Run a City features two accomplished practitioners of the art of urban changemaking, former two-term Atlanta Mayor Kasim Reed and former two-term Philadelphia Mayor Michael Nutter. If you've been with us for past episodes, you know the drill. If you're frustrated by the dysfunction and the anger and the bickering and the finger pointing and the mean-spiritedness coming out of Washington, D.C., well, this podcast is a testament to the notion that there are really three political parties in America: Democrats, Republicans, and mayors who have no choice but to be practical problem solvers. In today's episode, the Mayor's Talk with Bruce Katz. Bruce is the founding director of the Nowak Metro Finance Lab at Drexel University and one of the architects of the National Housing Task Force, along with Accelerator For America. Bruce was also HUD Chief of Staff under Bill Clinton and briefly under Barack Obama. He's forgotten more about cities than I'll ever know. We'll talk to Bruce about this perilous moment for cities, get his take on the nation's tenuous housing ecosystem being disrupted by the new administration, and explore whatever green shoots of encouragement we ought to be focusing on right now. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Yeah, look at him.
What's happening? Hey, Bruce. How are you?
Great to see you.
Hey, Mayor.
Hey.
That looks great. You're in the studio.
Yeah.
My team got me a studio too.
Today, so I had to schlep and find someplace.
That looks good. Wait till Nutter sees you. He's gonna be. This looks like we're gonna have to change the title of this podcast to Kasim After Dark.
Yeah, no. If you can see it, they can have the How to Run a City logo.
I like Kasim After Dark. I like that. I like
look at Mayor Nutter though, dressed up in the.
I'm talking about Bruce got a tie. I love it.
Look, I'm gonna be on with Kasim Reed and Bruce Katz. Yeah, I got it. Look, every week I'm just gonna step it up.
All right, I'm gonna have to join next time. I'm gonna actually take a shower and put on some clothes.
Yeah, that would be a start.
I'm wearing an Eagles t-shirt, man. I'm still in my Eagles t-shirt.
Not really. Mr. Mayor Kasim Reed. I know we're probably.
You clean today, Mayor.
Are you able to disclose your location, or are you in an undisclosable place?
No, I'm at the Atlanta Voice, one of the city's oldest Black newspapers.
Oh,
and they had a podcast studio and were kind enough to give me a place to lay my hat while Anne is on her sojourn today.
Very good. All right. I hear you. Now, I had a Board of City Trust meeting, so it's one of the few times that I actually put a tie on.
Well, you look great.
Thank you. I'm trying. I shaved this morning. I did the whole thing, and knowing that I was going to see you and then Bruce Katz. No one ever. Bruce has achieved wizard status.
I don't know about that.
No one actually ever meets with or sees Bruce. He just pronounces from on high and says things, and then people quote him. You ever notice that?
No, absolutely.
No one's ever people haven't seen Bruce in like 3 or 4 years.
We saw him at that one event that we did in Philly, but that's probably a year and a half ago now.
Yeah.
No, that was in December, I think.
Yeah. No, well, memories fade.
Yeah, I'm getting old. Before we get to Bruce and housing, but Bruce, jump in on this topic. I wanted to follow up on a conversation you and I had, Mayor Nutter, at our Citizen of the Year event. Thank you for coming. It was great. We gave Jalen Hurts Super Bowl MVP an award for all he's done for Philadelphia schools. And we decided to do that.
Let's just put it on the record. You made that decision before the Super Bowl.
Exactly. Right. And then thankfully he came through.
In more ways than one.
Exactly. Anyway,
though. You know,
What'd you say, man?
what a visionary. How prescient. I mean, the vision that we made.
Oh, Larry. Oh, well, wait a minute. Are you talking about Larry or are you talking about Lawrence?
I'm talking about Lawrence's decision.
Lawrence.
That's
Yeah.
my
That was
Bruce.
a Lawrence decision.
That's my
Lawrence.
Republican alter ego, Lawrence Platt. Um,
The third.
so thank you, but that was just luck. But anyway, Mayor Nutter, you said something I keep thinking about, which is you agreed with the James Carville op-ed that I think was in the New York Times,
Yeah.
which was Democrats should just roll over and play dead, lay low, let these incompetent folks do what they're going to do.
I saw an interview. I don't remember whether I read his New York Times piece, but I definitely saw an interview. And in the moment, it seemed like certainly this was a few weeks ago, seemed like the right strategy. And I'm not backtracking on that, but obviously some things have happened in between, and I'd be very interested in Mayor Reed's take on where we are literally like this weekend on CR, government open, government close. Never put my friend on the spot, but I mean it's an more than interesting and I think critical time for Democrats to try to develop a narrative and a perspective on like what are we doing?
So that's what I've been wrestling with after you made the comment and I read about Carville. If there has to be, in addition to letting the incompetence show, you have to give voters something to say yes to at some point, right? You have to have, and so I worry that just doing nothing is complicit because there's so much at stake. But I wanted to hear from the two of you because
I'd love to hear you guys' perspective on all this.
My perspective is that Senator Schumer is a good man, and he's going to lose his leadership position if he doesn't go for a walk and adjust who he is.
If he what?
If he doesn't go and adjust who he is, he's going to have to adjust if he's going to hold leadership during this times.
Right.
And he has great respect for Senate traditions. But comments that he made regarding allowing the CR to go forward and not blocking it and not fighting it, I think was a catastrophic judgment for a very good man whose intellect we really need.
Right.
But I think that he's going to have to go for a walk and understand that these times calls for a kind of aggressiveness and ferocity that they rely on us, meaning Republicans, that we don't have the pain threshold.
Right.
That's what they believe. They believe that we do not have the stomach for it.
That we're not willing to do.
We're not willing to do what it takes, which is why we're not in power right now.
Right.
Because a group of people who verifiably do not govern better than us as it relates to the economy. Democrats created 50 million jobs. Republicans created 1 million jobs, right, during the last 50 years. And we govern wonderfully, and they're savages during election cycles.
Campaign horrible.
Yeah.
Mayor Reed, I want to ask you, I don't know whether Bruce heard that particular one, but going into today and knowing what Larry wanted to talk about, I think in this moment, it really does bear repeating, and people need to hear what you said a few weeks ago about we're not going to nice our way out of this. I think that is the message one more time. And I could not more agree. I just read the New York Times story on there's now turbulence within the Democratic Party. Some of it is old guard, new, but also just understanding the moment.
But I mean, I really believe
you just always want to try to do the right thing. Well, you know, there are variations on doing the right thing, and Democrats in particular. I mean, but I want you to get to your point. You know, we don't want anybody to be hurt. We want people to be taken care of. And these are tough decisions, but sometimes people have to experience what they said they wanted. So give us, we're not going to nice our way out of this.
I mean, it's happening right in front of our eyes. I mean, the bottom line is the savagery and speed with which Republicans are moving, in my judgment, is worse than anything that we've seen in the history of American politics. And they have no intention of leaving because they're doing things that, if put before a normally functioning Justice Department, would not stand.
Right.
So once that happens, then you have a reason not to leave. And I think that Democrats are going to have to fight as well as we govern. And I think that Chuck Schumer last night, I don't know whether he intends to run again, but he definitely put the young woman in a position to beat him. The Congresswoman, you all know her.
AOC.
Yes, AOC.
AOC.
So last night, she clearly challenged him, and he walked right into a primary fight. And Chuck Schumer is one of the most talented Democrats in the United States of America.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't go for a walk and understand that he's going to have to radically adjust how he leads. He's going to be out. I don't know whether he's already decided to be out. I don't know what's going on in his mind. But the country, in terms of Democrats last night, want no part of any of this.
No.
The only thing that's being done right now in the United States of America is that the government is being called out so you can provide the tax cuts. That's all that's happening.
Right. Right.
How much money, what do we have to get rid of to fund the tax cuts? That's all that's happening. And I think Democrats need to make it clear that every horrible, unspeakable thing that is happening, cancer research, Department of Education being gutted, aid around the world, which is 1% of the budget of the United States, all being eliminated, EPA being gutted, veterans being treated horribly, all of it is so that people who already did amazing and got more wealth during COVID and the pandemic. They got more wealth during the worst of times for everybody else.
Right.
Going to get more.
Right. This is a John McCain moment. This is a John McCain moment.
Exactly. I think that's the message.
John McCain moment.
Every single day.
What does that mean, a John McCain moment?
When he saved healthcare.
Ah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
John McCain.
Yeah.
John McCain, who in a friendly audience running against Barack Obama, when pressed by a constituent or participant, wanted to, Obama, not born here, he's not a patriot, whatever she was running down. That man's in an election defended the incumbent president and said, that's not right. He's a good person. He loves this country, blah, blah, blah. And the lady tried to come back on him, and he literally just, no, basically, you're wrong, and walked away. Then, when they tried to, for the 61st time, tried to kill Obamacare, walked into the chamber, did this, and walked away.
Yeah.
And save healthcare for millions of Americans. I mean, that's a patriot.
Yeah.
There's a war hero. There's a person who was mocked and ridiculed by the now again president of the United States, who never served in the military. This guy was he was a POW for 5 years. This is what we're doing. Right.
Let me ask you,
after students, but you pardon 1,500 people who on live television beat up 100 police officers and stormed the Capitol?
Great point. Yeah.
It's
Let me
incredible.
ask you this about fighting. And then I want to hear from,
Yeah, of course.
we'll get Bruce in on this as
Bruce is
well.
a fighter.
Yeah, Bruce is a fighter. Um, Although I want to reveal something about Bruce in a minute.
Boy.
Uh, a little secret that no one knows. The You have to be smart about fighting. Like, I don't think the Democrats, I don't think Al Green's, and not our favorite Al Green, the
Yeah.
70s soul singer.
Not Al Green, not Bobby Womack, not
But I don't think Al Green, I don't think that helped persuade anyone what he did in the joint set, and what the other Democrats, their demeanor so that's what worries me. Fight for performative sake as opposed to being smart and strategic.
yeah.
Your thoughts?
It's not the 60s.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The bidding paddles and all of the rest, I thought was the wrong note, but they're grappling and learning and trying to figure it out. And somebody is going to emerge who knows what they're doing because there's a massive void for a leader that knows how to fight in a way that is palatable to the American public.
Right.
But the reason I didn't have a problem with what Al Green did was because they are trying. And when you're doing something that that's out of your comfort zone, you're going to look corny a couple times because you're not used to being these people love every minute of blood, guts, and the whole, they love it all.
Yeah.
So when you encounter that type of human being, you have to adjust who you are to deal with people who are doing what they're doing.
Which is uncomfortable
Exactly.
and not natural.
You know, you had the committee meeting with the woman congressman person who had undergone a sex change. The guy introduced her as a man.
Right.
I mean, but if we're going to have a shot again,
Right.
we'll have to be real comfortable dealing with that kind of behavior right when it happens.
Well, we talk to young people all the time. I mean, sometimes you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. This is not natural. None of this is natural, right? So all of us end up in situations where, the norm is being obliterated. We're trying to deal with it, but we have values and modes of behavior. And now you're dealing with the absurd. How do you deal with that?
Yeah.
Right?
No, it's a great point. I want to welcome our guest,
Yeah.
Bruce Katz, no stranger to the podcast. Bruce is the founding director of the Nowak Metro Finance Lab at Drexel University, one of the architects of the National Housing Task Force, along with our partner, Accelerator for America. Bruce was also HUD chief of staff twice, I believe, under Bill Clinton and then also Barack Obama. He has forgotten more about cities than I'll ever know. He's the co-author of the brilliant The New Localism, How Cities Can Thrive in the Age of Populism, which is more relevant now than ever. And here's my little secret fact about Bruce Katz, a major Beatles fanboy.
Yeah.
His knowledge about the Fab Five rivals his knowledge of cities. So, Bruce, welcome and quick. You're on a desert island. What is the indispensable Beatles song?
Here Comes the Sun.
Very well.
Late
Like
Beatles.
that, like that.
That is exactly what Democrats need.
Right. Here comes the sun.
Did you see the way he handled it?
Yeah. Boom.
It didn't take him 30 minutes.
Yeah. He didn't give me a dissertation on how the song was
It was
constructed,
intuitive.
what studio it was recorded in, and
Yeah.
But Larry, two corrections. A, it's the Fab Four, unless you're counting their Brian Epstein or their producer George Martin.
I was hung up on Chris Webber and Jalen Rose's Michigan team in 1990.
Here we go.
Now he's just dunking on us.
This is the problem with having really smart people.
Yeah, now he just decided to hang from the rim. and give you additional information.
And by the way, when I went back under Obama, I just did a 100-day stint. I would never take away from Sean Donovan and Laurel Blackford, who was the chief of staff.
Great guy.
So, I was just helping out.
Nobody remembers that, Bruce. So just take the accolade and keep moving.
Yeah. Well, Bruce, what are your thoughts? First of all, I want to get to housing because you're out with this toolkit, beginning to develop this toolkit for cities, which I think is indispensable. But how bad is this from your perspective? You're in this every day, given your experience. How fucking scared should we be?
We should be very scared. I mean, I think, and just building on what the mayors have said, this is a war on the poor. This is a war on science. This is the dismantling of the federal government. This is abandoning our allies and starting trade wars with our partners. This is unprecedented. It's a constitutional crisis because they're defying judicial orders. It's a federalist crisis because de facto they're just shoving down enormous amounts of responsibility, states, localities, private sector, philanthropy, without any plan for how we're going to take on all the nation's challenges. If you just compare what they're doing, Reagan year one, about 140 billion in cuts in current day dollars. Gingrich, 97, the budget deal with President Clinton, about 540 billion. We're talking trillions here, all to basically do what Mayor Reed was saying, which is to support tax cuts for the very wealthy. So this is unprecedented on every dimension possible. And I think we're going to be a different country because of this. I think they're going to be successful at many things, actually, because the Republicans in the Congress are not standing up to any of it. And they're defying judicial orders. I assume they'll respect the Supreme Court. But other than that, it's not clear they're respecting anything. So we're going to be a radically different country. And I think we're going to defederalize. For anyone on, the podcast who actually follows federalism, which is probably about two people, the U.S. will become more like Germany, actually. A shrunken central state.
What do you mean, Bruce?
It means that the central government, the national government, will do less. And the power will basically devolve down to states, cities, counties, and metropolitan areas. It'll be a radically different federal republic. And Germany is the way it is today because after the war, we made sure by writing their constitution, they would not have a strong national government for obvious reasons. So we've decided to become a different federal republic, not really because the electorate demanded it, but because a few right-wing ideologues and one uber billionaire has decided to take us in this direction.
Bruce, I continue to struggle, and I ask different people, and I will fully understand. Often it is almost impossible to understand the impossible. Where is this all? What's the point? Where are they trying to go? What era was the whole "Make America Great Again"? Like, what are they really trying to accomplish in your view?
I think they're taking advantage of what I would call the geography of discontent. And I really do think that there were choices made in this country over the last 40 or 50 years where we literally, unilaterally disarmed our industrial base. We offshored, we outsourced, we globalized to a radical extent across both political parties. And because of that, we eroded the ability of the U.S. to be a manufacturing powerhouse, and by being a manufacturing powerhouse, to assert dominance on critical technologies that relate to the production process. We basically gave it away. And the middle class was eroded. And there was both enormous discontent among segments of the population and places left behind. And Trump basically took advantage of that. And other people in other countries have taken advantage of that.
But I'm still trying to understand to what end. When people do things like that, good or evil. In my head, I'm like, okay, so you have a plan. I mean, you're trying to get to something. Like, what is the point of all of this?
Yeah, I think they're going back. I mean, this is a weird combination. We can understand by taking advantage and by demagoguing the geography of discontent, how they got into power. But I think it is a strange combination of starving the government. You know, Grover Norquist says, let's shrink the government, so you can
Put it in the
basically
bathtub.
drown it in a bathtub. It's a bit of that, right? A war on the poor, which we saw back in the 90s with welfare reform, that has just continued, make Medicaid a block grant, all this stuff. What is hard to really understand is the war on science, cancer research. They're not touching the military, right? So it's more on the healthcare side. And this, approach tariffs with our allies, which is basically creating a trade war. And no, so this is like a radical perspective around, global economics, which is the new piece, but it's on top of, this other part of ideological combat, which has been around really since Reagan, but has now reached an extreme, essentially. So it's a weird combination of right-wing populism, some traditional, though it's hard to give credit to this, fiscal discipline. There's no fiscal discipline here. But it's just a strange confluence of different perspectives that have come together in a toxic stew.
Bruce, I can't have you on without asking you your thoughts on the impact of private equity buying homes across the United States of America. And your thoughts on what cities across the country should do to defend when in Atlanta, 1 out of 4 home purchases in the metro is done by a private equity entity. And when you're trying to buy a house now, you're competing not against another person, you're competing against a purchaser with unlimited resources.
Well, to some extent, this is just, pure unadulterated capitalism. Investment is going to flow where you can make high returns with the least amount of risk. It's as simple as that. Because we have not built enough housing in this country for a long period of time, for a whole bunch of reasons, institutional investors, wealth is able to come into cities, particularly growing cities like Atlanta or Phoenix or any of the Texas cities, and buy up large portions of single-family homes, put them out for rent and gouge the renters, right? And make returns fast at scale. So this is just the market operating in many respects. It began really after the Great Recession, when there was just a large amount of foreclosed properties, and the only way to clean the system was to bring that kind of capital in. Right. But I think what we have is a structural shift in the U.S. housing market of who owns housing, who finances housing, and the technologies which enable investors sitting with a laptop in LA or Miami to buy anything anywhere. I mean, this is just, this is technology taken to an extreme as well. So the only cure for all this is to basically boost supply. I mean, we have to start building again, and we have to start building at reasonable cost, innovating the construction system, using public assets, land and buildings, coming up with different kind of financial, all of it. The system is completely broken right now. That's why we started this National Housing Crisis Task Force, bipartisan. Governor Spencer Cox of Utah, Mayors Bibb and Dickens from Atlanta and Cleveland, and Fifth Third Bank and 24 other members, including Henry Cisneros, my former boss. So this is not a partisan issue, actually. I mean, this is bipartisan. We got Republican states doing lots of things actually right now because it's turned into just a crisis of monumental proportions. And there are very sound and sensible things to do. But the investors are just operating and they're being rational in many respects.
Bruce, one of the things I was encouraged by before this administration was that there there seemed to be a third way emerging, which is alternatively called, which came out of the San Francisco housing wars, alternately called supply side progressivism or abundance progressivism. And I really thought that had legs. Can you, for our listeners who aren't following the political ramifications of abundance, walk us through. And you actually did a thing at our Ideas We Should Steal festival, in which you talked to one of the chief, I forget her name, the young woman from San Francisco, who started YIMBYism. And that's really what you're talking about, is this sort of like, finally Democrats have come around to see that we have to have a supply of goods, of public goods, not just housing, but everything, more healthcare, more. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the question is, how have we got into a situation where the U.S. doesn't build housing? We're talking for all segments of the population, not everywhere. Let's just be clear. There are portions of the country where there is supply being built, particularly in states like Texas. So, but the rise of the Yes in My Backyard YIMBY movement is a recognition that in many parts of the country, local government, whether it's because of zoning regulations, land use ordinances, permitting, or state governments because of building codes, have basically impeded, undermined the ability of the private sector, nonprofit developers, to get stuff built. Right. And so this is a classic remove the barriers, remove regulatory restrictions, which is why it's so bipartisan. Because if there's any thesis to the Republican housing strategy in the Trump administration, though we haven't really seen it manifest itself yet, it's like, let's get out of the way and let the market function. Okay. That's what states like Montana and Utah have been doing at the state level with zoning reforms, permitting reforms, building code reforms. That's what California has been doing. Blue state, red states, and that's what many localities have been doing. Now you got to build off that platform and actually make the numbers work.
Right.
Because just making zoning work doesn't suddenly get stuff built. I mean, you got to do the capital stack.
Right. Got to work for you.
Yeah.
So Bruce, if you were advising a mayor, do you think that defensive strategies are appropriate on this private equity acquisition issue?
I think the question at this point is, we've got so many assaults coming right now, right? Because they are, with regard to housing, they're boosting the cost of construction because of tariffs and immigration. There's, basically trying to scale back federal support for vouchers, public housing. They may be upheaving the tax code with regard to making light tech, low-income housing tax credit, and other tax advantage capital work because they want to lower corporate tax rates. They may privatize Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. They've eradicated fair housing and other civil rights protection. So there's like 7 pillars to a federal housing system. They're ripping out all of them, in addition to like reducing the HUD workforce so that no one's there to even do anything. So the question at this point, I think, for cities is everything is happening all at once, right? And the path forward, I think, is for cities to push back on these federal, scale back, because some of them has still not been, effectuated. But secondly, to realize cities have more power than they know, they have more capital than they think, they have the ability to actually unlock their housing market. Right. So to start moving in a very, progressive and aggressive fashion. Atlanta's doing remarkable things right now. Cleveland's doing remarkable things. Places like San Diego. So there's a lot of bubbling right now of
Yeah, but I need your help.
practices, products that can be blown across the country.
Yeah, but what I'm really getting at is it appropriate at the local level to put protective measures in place to guard against the acquisition of housing stock by private equity?
Well, I'm not sure. I think that the issue for me at this stage, right, is there's so much coming at cities. Where do you put what is essentially a limited amount of capacity, legislative capacity, private capacity, all the rest? I think at this stage, for the big institutional investors, there may be a collective negotiation with them. Cities not just acting each one on their own, but a collection of cities going to some of these large institutional investors and saying, listen, folks, we've got multiple market opportunities here. Here's what you're doing in my city. Here's what you're doing in this other city, and so forth. We need a different path forward. And here's what we're doing. We want you to be part of the solution, not the problem. Some of these investors are actually small bore. But for the large institutional investors, and this is more the way a lot of European countries operate, let cities aggregate their market power and begin to negotiate with the large institutional investors.
Right.
I don't know if there's a perfect fix city by city, actually.
Yeah.
I think
Are you
there's more
seeing
of an
any?
aggregation of market power.
I'm sorry.
No.
Are you seeing any evidence of that starting or beginning, or who's talking about it? I mean, in addition, of course, to yourself. I mean, because I agree with you that this is, I mean, everybody's got to do their own thing, but I think this is one of those moments where the solidarity, partnership, relationship is really going to make a difference.
So here's what I think's going, and you'll totally appreciate this because both of you did it. There's a lot of bubbling of innovative practices and policies locally, an enormous amount. This is the genius of the American federalism is whatever the federal government's doing, people on the local level are doing stuff. That's the good news. Land, construction, capital, regulation, governance, tons of stuff going on. The challenge is, does that diffuse and scale across the country? Pretty inefficiently right now. That has to be perfected. And on this last point, cities are the engines of the American economy. So they're not quite aggregating their market power so they can negotiate with large capital. Yeah. So the innovation, at the core is happening, but it's not moving fast enough across the country. And we're not getting that 2 + 2 = 5 effect because you can aggregate market power. So a lot of work to do here. In fact, Trump's going to compel all this to happen, frankly. I mean, because what's the other option? You're not going to wait for the Democrats to come in and restore everything. That ain't happening. That's not happening. It's going to have to be pushed down and, advance locally.
You've walked me through this before, but you referenced earlier that cities have more capital and more power than they think. Walk us through that, because I think you've cited examples in Europe where cities leverage their assets to save themselves, right? Talk to us about that.
Well, I'll just give you an example out of Europe because I think it can be repeated across the country. So probably about a third of land, is owned by government in the United States. It's either, feds own a little. They mostly own the West, like Nevada or something. But states and localities own quite a bit. And then but it's fragmented across general purpose local government, counties, transit authorities, public housing authorities, public utilities. I mean, the school districts, man, they own a ton of stuff. It's fragmented across all these entities. In Europe, what happens, and this is the Copenhagen example, Copenhagen collapsed as an economy, lost all its industrial base, its harbor and its port basically ceased to function. They took all the land and buildings that the government owned, which was vast, and put it under one entity, Copenhagen City and Port. That entity was then able to manage the redevelopment of the core of Copenhagen, both the harbor area and between the downtown and the airport, and use revenues from sales and the equity stake in those redevelopment projects to finance a modern transit system for the entire city. So public assets and the disposition of public assets being used in the service of economic growth. In the US, you could do that in the service of housing production. Frankly, we're going to need to use it in the service of compensating for all the cuts the feds are making in lots of different things. Very few cities, even know what they own in terms of public assets. I mean, they literally don't even know what they own across all these different agencies and levels of government. And they don't really cohere it, unify it, integrate it, so it has this big bang effect. Atlanta's trying to get there. They're at the vanguard of this. They have a new Atlanta Urban Development Corporation. That could be the model. Austin, Texas is doing municipal property advisors. They're privatizing it. Either way, this is where there could be enormous value created for cities to basically build, preserve affordable housing. So look, we look at Europe as a bunch of like left-wing, whatever. They actually are more capitalist than we are with regard to public assets. We're just dysfunctional for the most part.
You know, you reminded me of a certain mayor I know who 10 years ago tried to sell the city-owned gasworks in Philadelphia and would have been, I think, a $1.5 billion windfall. There was a public asset and I forget who that mayor was, but it was ultimately he was slapped in the face by the corrupt political culture.
No, he doesn't want to respond.
Yeah, no comment from that mayor.
He's got PTSD or scars.
I still come back to that as a.
I'm going to pass on that one.
He's going to pass on that one. But it is. So give us some.
Hey, Larry, just one other thing about the Atlanta Urban Development Corporation. It is a subsidiary of the Public Housing Authority in Atlanta because those public housing authorities were created in the 1930s during the New Deal. State statutes, enormous powers, unbelievable powers, because it was the 1930s. So this is where, lawyers might actually be quite helpful. You can go back and read some of the original statutes and realize, holy shit, there's a lot more power here than we knew. And we can begin to, work on all these different issues.
Bruce, where are you on the micro home movement in the United States and its role in the affordable housing strategy?
So this is what people often refer to as the little houses.
Yeah.
Look, I think it's part of a broader movement around construction innovation. Because right now, to build a low-income housing tax credit unit in California is $1 million a house. To build it in Massachusetts is probably $750,000. To build it in most parts of the country is anywhere from $350,000 to $500,000. We got to innovate on construction techniques, and we've got to I've seen micro homes work for the homeless population in many parts of the country. But we got to bring innovation in technologies and materials and delivery into the housing market. It's one of the least innovative sectors in the United States. I mean, to be frank, and it needs to be blown up.
Bricks.
Yeah. So it's part of it. We got so many issues now in housing. You've got to do all these things.
Yeah.
Sort of led, design, delivered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are modular homes part of what you're talking about?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Japan, Sweden, other countries, incredible off-site manufacturing that needs to be brought into the United States.
Mayor Reed, one of the things, I'm sure Bruce knows this, and Larry, you've probably seen some of the stories here in Philly, Philadelphia Housing Authority, Kelvin Jeremiah, president, they're buying buildings.
Yeah.
They're buying existing buildings. It is cheaper for them to rehab an existing building for affordable housing than to build new.
Yeah.
It's right. Literally just bought one 3 blocks from my house, bought one on the other side of the Winfield community where I live, and that's how they're starting. That's a part of their strategy to achieve some of the goals that our Mayor Parker has talked about. 30,000 housing units, and I mean, however it was communicated at the beginning, people say, "Oh, we're talking about 30,000 new houses." No, we're talking about 30,000 affordable units.
Right.
Some may already exist. We're going to make them affordable, through other mechanisms. But just having, and this, I think, housing is now going the way of kind of sustainability and climate. During when you and I were in office, one of the things at the time was everybody had to have a climate resiliency plan.
Yeah.
We did that. Now you see cities housing plan, affordable housing plans all across the country, and is one of the quote unquote new things. Because the piece by piece and CDBG and low income housing tax credits. I mean, my whole thing was, and of course we overlap, if you don't figure out how to get the private sector involved, the government could never build and fund enough housing for whatever your population is. Small, medium, and large cities, the city government by itself could never solve that particular problem. It's just you don't have enough resource.
I mean, one thing to think about, because the U.S. is an odd country in many respects compared to everyone else.
We love our country.
In most parts of the world, education is national. In the U.S., it's local.
Right.
In most parts of the world, housing is local. In the U.S., the federal government has an outsized effect on this.
Yep.
Bottom line, you tend to innovate. This gets to both mayors' points, where you have power. So not surprisingly, around schools, there's been enormous innovation around charters and everything, right? I'm not saying it's all worked out, but it's a real focus for decades. Housing, until recently, was not seen as a local, hey, we're waiting for the feds.
Right.
Okay, well, now we'll be waiting ad infinitum for the feds because they're ripping the wires out. So this is why this is why what other countries do on housing is super relevant.
Right.
Because it's so localized in other countries. That's why it's super
interesting.
Relevant. Yeah.
And thought about it that way.
Hey, Bruce, you write that stakeholders, not just office holders, but stakeholders in cities and states need to be the adults in the room and play the role of wartime consigliere, as in The Godfather.
Right.
What do you mean by that? And I guess that was the Robert Duvall character, right?
But
put some meat on the bones of that analogy.
Well, it was actually Genco was the original concierge.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Genco olive oil.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got a lot of Godfather fans here.
Yeah, but see, Bruce, now you need to get you in this conversation. You now, what do you call it, Mayor Reed? The rapture. What's that character?
I just know that Bruce was so impressive earlier when we went to the Godfather territory. At home.
Yeah, well, he knows that too. But what's that character out of Jurassic? What's that?
Oh, the philosopher.
The Raptors.
Yeah.
Well, there is the scene in Godfather 1 where Al Pacino turns to Tom Hagen. Al Pacino is plotting the overthrow of all the other 5 families and assassinating the heads of the other 5 families. And he turns to Robert Duvall and says, you're going to be our lawyer in Vegas.
Not our wartime concierge.
You're not a wartime
right.
consigliere.
Yeah.
Who better
because
to
things are going to get rough.
Yeah.
He said, "Well, Michael, what did I do?"
What did I do?
No, everything's all right, Tom. You're going out to Vegas, right? I need something
And he
else.
softened it. He said, and if I need advice, who better to advise me than my father?
Well, right.
It sounds
What
like
are you
a
gonna say
U.S.
to that?
Conference
What
of
are you gonna say
Mayors
to that?
meeting, but in any way, the fact is things are getting real rough, and that's why at a minimum, cities need to understand how much they're dependent on the federal government. New York City actually did the calculation, which is conservative, right? New York City, 100 billion a year, 54 billion is for Medicare, Medicaid, and some affordable care
Oh,
stuff, 33 billion Social Security, SSI, SNAP, about 8 billion for education and housing, another 5 billion for the NYCHA, the New York City Housing Authority, CUNY, and then there's a whole bunch of little stuff. But everyone's got to go through this thing because it's a stress test, it's a vulnerability index. My Lord, we are dependent on the federal government. Some things we can replace. I mean, some
yeah.
things we can compensate. A lot we can't, you know. So
What occurs to me as I hear all you guys talk is that more than any other political candidate in my memory, there is one guy who you would think would position himself as the builder in chief. Doesn't it make political sense for Donald Trump to say that he's going to build housing? That he's a builder? That is so on brand.
well, his dad built housing. I mean, his father did, Fred Trump. There's lots of issues around it. I grew up
Yeah.
in a neighborhood in South Brooklyn, right by what was called Trump Warbass, which were all these houses, apartments built in the 50s. His dad built houses.
Yeah.
This guy built a bunch of towers. I mean,
Right.
but I don't, I mean, you're right, but
But there's no there. There's no there's
yeah.
but just as a matter of politics, it seems like branding wise, it's sitting there for him. But I'll never
But
understand.
we're not in a
Not trying to accomplish
period of
stuff. This
problem
is a
solving.
retribution
Yeah.
tour. This is revenge and retribution. We're not trying to accomplish anything. We're gonna throw some red meat out
Yeah.
to the true believers. We're deporting folks. We're destroying departments and agencies. I mean, the dilemma. We started this conversation earlier. I mean, who do they think is processing the paperwork for the checks and for the benefits and then the courts are pushing back and say, Office of Personnel Management, you actually don't have the authority to fire people. People have they have some kind of rights or something. And so this is mostly performative, with no consequences in the moment. The consequences won't be felt for 6 to 8 months, right? Now, I mean, they are buying these lessons and they're owning it, but because at some point you just can't blame Joe Biden anymore. You fired all these people, right?
I thought the tactic that they used that was breathtaking was the attack on veterans.
Mm.
That was for me, that was a signal of how far they were willing to go.
Mm-hmm.
Because even among Republicans, that would have been unthinkable and hands off. And to do what they did to veterans and nobody stop it and stand up in a decisive way.
Yeah.
I think that their whole technique is to constantly see how far they can go.
Yes. Yes. Push every envelope, push every boundary, get a hand smack a couple places, change the narrative, go do something else.
Part-time talk show host, Secretary of Defense, the most powerful military in the history of mankind.
Right. Former NFL
Force
football
people
player.
to vote for it. You take a guy from Wayne's World or whatever that MTV show was and put him, make him Secretary of Transportation.
Was it the lady from the WWE? Is education?
No, he was on Real World or something like that. Wayne's World or something. The guy,
Yeah, Real World. Yeah.
was on
And
real.
then
And
and then
then
Mayor Nutter, you're right, the wife of
She's the
the
WWE, right?
Vince McMahon, Linda
Right.
McMahon is
Secretary of
at
Education. I
education.
saw an interview. Somebody asked her a question about some program, and she said, "Well, it was like a acronym." And she said, "Well, I've only been here a little while. I don't know what that is." I mean, it was Intellectual Disabilities Education Act. I mean, like, did you have a prep course or something? Did anything? The first term, I mean, we know why the HUD secretary, the
Ben
eye
Carson.
doctor,
Ben Carson. Yeah.
Oh, Ben Carson, yeah.
he got picked because he grew up poor.
Yeah.
That's the qualification to run one of the most important federal agencies for people in the United States of America. So,
But I will say that Trump's first term
oh, and
now
by the
looks
way,
like,
that is absolutely the black job.
yeah, right. But I will say that the Trump's first term cabinet now looks like a bunch of like qualified statesmen
Yeah.
compared to what we have
Yeah.
now.
No, this is just, I'm gonna do whatever I want. I don't care. You can't do anything about it. I won. I'm done. That's all this is.
Bruce,
Revenge
let's end with something
positive.
that you think holds some positivity, either in the housing space or just generally.
Gonna go back to Mayor Reed's point.
Yeah.
I think all of this, chaos, confusion, consternation, and people just kind of generally being pissed off is going to force an uprising of the next generation of leaders who are literally just going to say, "I'm not waiting."
it's right there in front of it. I mean, it's right there for somebody. It's wide open. And I mean, I watched AOC on television, and I've been doing this a little while. It was as good a move as I have seen in politics on the Democrat side since the election. It was clean, it was simple, and Senator Schumer and his team were not agile enough to see that a blind man with a blindfold can see what is being done to you. And he wakes up today and walks right into it.
Said a blind man with a blindfold.
Yeah, absolutely. That's mine.
You own
Well,
that.
I'll end on this note. I will say that going back to the Tocqueville, the U.S. has always shown the power of the local. And
Say it again. Say it
we're
again.
going to become a union of states as opposed to a United States. And it's going to push.
Bruce, run that back for us again.
Run that
That's
one more
important.
time.
Well, I think, from the founding of the Republic, the U.S. has always been an exceptional nation where we've been driven by networks of public, private, and civic individuals and institutions. We are really unlike any other place in the world, which is generally run by the public sector. In the U.S., long tradition of volunteerism, long tradition of philanthropy, long tradition of corporate engagement. It's very local. People are committed to place in many respects. That's what's going to be our salvation. It may take decades to basically respond to the wreckage, but we have another alternative. And that's, I think, the alternative we'll use.
Yeah.
That's great. That's a great place to end as someone who, really values acting locally. That's why we started the Citizen, because we're here in Philly, the birthplace of American democracy, right? So it's Bruce, as usual, can't thank you enough, and hopefully you'll come back and talk to us some more as the circus continues.
Well, I'm really thrilled to be with these two guys because at the end of the day, mayors are, in many respects, center of the universe. So,
Bruce,
I
huge
just want to point out
thanks.
for the.
We got to hang out in Copenhagen when we were at Bilderberg.
That's right.
You started talking about Copenhagen. I remember us being educated on it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I'll comment on, we talk about Bruce and I mentioned, he's He's like Oz, and I just want to highlight the fact that we can tell. I mean, Larry's in his spot. He's got Black Moses and Marvin Gaye in the background. We know where he is. Mayor Reed got a background. I'm of course in a one of my many offices.
But you clean today, though.
At the Four Seasons today, and Bruce has the most nondescript, undisclosable, could be a black site background. For all we know, it is impossible to know where this man is, and he's not giving it up today.
Absolutely.
It's like a CIA safe house.
I'm glad he was here. I came here in a good mood because the last podcast we had, I got so much feedback that it was too dark. They said that it was crazy. I mean, I had at least 15 messages saying it was good, but just too dark.
Yeah, that's
came to be upbeat and positive, and I knew that Bruce was the guy to do it with.
Yeah.
And Senator Schumer caved, which pushed me back in the dark place.
You're the one that started that. I mean, you did it to yourself. What do you want?
But that is our challenge in these times, right? Is to be engaged, but not to get down. Let's make a commitment here that we'll always have fun on the podcast while taking these issues super seriously.
Yeah. Well, that's been our thing from the beginning. But every now and then, we might falter a little bit, but we're back on track. Yeah,
and Bruce has really helped. Bruce, the Bruce forever, and now heretofore known as the fifth Beatle.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a real accolade. Yeah.
There you go.
All right, man. Thank you so much.
All good. All right, guys.
Talk to you.
Bye-bye.
Well, that's it for this episode of How to Really Run a City. Remember, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and tell your friends about us. We really want to widen the conversation because by 2050, something like 2/3 of the world will live in cities. As cities go, so goes the nation, and so goes the world. For now, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.